and he's going to give us a talk about Grin security. Please give a round of applause as he gets going.
Okay, hey everyone. I have been fortunate enough to help facilitate with the Grin crypto library security audit. I've been involved in the crypto space for about 7 years now, and I'm the co-founder of a security company, SecureWare, and we mainly focus on audits. So it was a real treat to be able to be a part of this. So just kind of high level, why are we taking the community's time and resources to spend time on audits? So there's a few perspectives. Some people think, well, it's just a show of good faith to your community, and it's just kind of what you do if you have your community's best interest in mind. It doesn't necessarily make sense for every possible project, but Grin is a bit of a unique project, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Bitcoin had no professional security audits, and it did just fine. However, it launched in a very different climate. It was very experimental. People weren't trying to go out and use it to transact right away on day zero and potentially putting themselves at risk for fund loss or de-anonymization. And it's also kind of beyond just covering your ass. It is nice to have that kind of box ticked for your audits, because then you can say, well, there's a vulnerability, but it was this SecureWare's problem. They were supposed to do the audit. They didn't find it. But I think for projects like Grin, there's actually something more at stake than just people covering their asses and ticking boxes for the community. This is a privacy-oriented project that I think is intended to be used in real life. And if we're using something to protect our privacy in real life, there's actual real humans that can be put at risk with this. So we have a responsibility as a community to kind of do as much diligence as we can to keep our community safe. That being said, security audits are not magic. They're not going to solve every problem that we have. We're never going to be able to say, we've had these firms do our audits on this project, and it's safe, it's secure, there could be no vulnerabilities. It's a function of the quality of the resources that are being applied, how much time they're spending, and how they're directed to work on that project. So maybe you're looking very deep on a few points, or you're looking very wide and trying to cover anything, and maybe at the service level. And so each project has a unique set of needs. Grin's project, the needs are pretty serious for what we're trying to promise to the community. So what we're essentially trying to do is, we're not trying to make any claims about this library is perfectly secure, nothing can happen. All we're trying to do is increase the time and money that it would take to find a vulnerability that we would be kind of concerned about as a community. So that's really our goal with the security audits, is to really increase the money and time it takes to disrupt the technology that the community is relying on. So in an ideal situation with Grin, we would have a launch date a few months out. We would have all of the code already written into a state that it's ready to be deployed in, and we would be able to model out all of the things that we're going to look at, how deep we're going to go, and who's going to be doing it. And it would take a few months probably. It wouldn't be cheap, but we would be able to feel pretty confident in everything we've deployed. The reality is the launch date had to happen. If you keep waiting until you're exactly ready, then it'll never launch. So it had to be launched, and we had a pretty small budget. It was 16 Bitcoin, and in the bear market, that's not a lot. So what the community decided to do was to reduce the scope of the full audit into something that is critical but also manageable. So the scope was reduced to a crypto library that Grin relies on. It was originally the libsccp in C was forked by the Elements project to add Peterson commitments and the range proofs, and then the Grin project went ahead and extended that further to add support for bulletproofs and AgSig. So the reason that this was kind of chosen as a point of focus is it does contain all the critical cryptographic operations that Grin relies on. So when you're constructing a transaction and trying to attach your range proof, that library is required, and Grin is useless without range proofs, right? Because then people can create fake money. So this functionality is really critical, and without it, if there's a vulnerability there, then it doesn't matter how good the rest of your code is, you're still going to have some pain. So an anonymous donor stepped up and paid JP directly for this audit. So as far as the community fund is concerned, there were no Bitcoin deducted, which is great because that can be rolled into future audits. The primary auditor was JP Aumasson. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with him. He's a cryptographer, created the Blake hash function, SIP hash, which is in the Linux kernel, and Gravity Sphinx quantum resistant signature scheme. He does a lot of good work, and I encourage you to check him out and read what he has to say. So we did a reduced scope audit for the library. We kind of, these are the general things that we looked for, which is pretty standard for a crypto library. And so some of the things that came up the most in this particular assessment is on the software safety side with the memory leaks. The library's in C. Anyone who's done a lot of stuff in C knows that the memory management can be kind of painful, and it's almost impossible to go through without any mistakes there. Looking at the underlying cryptographic primitives, making sure everything has been treated properly. You can have your specification perfect, but it could be implemented in a way that doesn't adhere to the specification, and it's probably not that useful. Random RNG generation, it's important to make sure that you just do that right. You're not pulling randomness from the system time or something like that. Key links, pretty standard stuff, and then serialization and deserialization is another common pain point. So I'm just going to step through a few of the things that we found. None of them are groundbreaking or earth-shattering, but it's good to just kind of have an understanding of kind of what we're looking at and seeing that these things are being thought about. So the first issue that came up was the compiler could potentially optimize out this assignment where we're clearing some private exponent bits after an operation. And so if we don't set that to 0, then you could have that piece in memory with those private bits that could potentially be recovered or exfiltrated through some other kind of attack. So you want to make sure that that's overwritten. And as far as I understand, the way to do that with this is to actually check once it's been compiled to see if the compiler's actually optimized it out or not. If anyone knows a cleaner way to do that or something, please let me know. Missing null pointer checks, not that exciting, but if you do have a library and you're passing back null pointers to something that's calling, crash, performance issues, something worse, something scarier. Again, at this lower level library, we want to do everything we can to keep everything tight. And so very, very simple check at the arc check, just make sure you're not dealing with nulls. And this was fixed by useplume. More memory stuff, some unfreed heap allocations. Again, this is just kind of the biggest impact of this on the service would probably be performance, could lead to some crashing, and just general good to have cleaned up. Some more unchecked heap allocations, similar scenario. We can get null returned, which isn't that good for if you're relying on the library for something else and you aren't prepared to handle that null. So as a library that a lot of other components are relying on, these things are important to clean up. There's also an unnecessary operation that was removed. If there's something there and it doesn't serve a purpose, then it shouldn't be there because it just increases the attack surface, more lines of code. Finally, there was an optimization that JP pointed out, but then actually as I looked deeper, I think Jasper, you'd already committed some code for this, but it was basically just checking that a pass parameter fits within a certain range, because there's some more expensive computations down the line that we can save ourselves if we just check that our parameters in that range. So we already had the optimization, so nothing yet to do there. So this is the PR with the fixes from the result of the audit and the hash where they were merged in. There's only a total of 15 lines changed, which is good, right? You don't want to get back your crypto library audit and have hundreds of lines of changed code, because that's generally pretty scary and you're going to want that re-audited. So not a lot of diff coming out, but it's still critical to kind of look at this close of a level to these things, because you never know when a memory leak is going to come back and get you. So the mainnet's launched, nothing's burned down, we're all still alive, and we're wanting to add new features and grow, but it's still important to continue to take the security of our code seriously, and to you know, again, like I was saying before, you want to have like a good perspective on it, right? It's not a magic bullet, but you also have to do what you can to be responsible to your community. So the next things that are up for the audit are some Rust, which hopefully will have less memory leak errors there. We've got the core keychain and chain crates for Grin, and I'm really excited to see what is turned up in there. I believe the status of that is we have some bids in from some other firms, and those are just kind of being compared, looking at timelines, what the community is going to get, and we're still trying to reach a decision on that. Okay, so the Grin crypto library, the first audit is done. That doesn't mean there doesn't need to be more, but I think it was a good first step with the community to show that we're taking security seriously, we're taking the right steps to make sure that the code the community is using is going to continue to keep them safe. So you can find the full audit report at this link, and I'm sure the slides will be available later. You can contribute to the Grin community funding. I believe the audit funding is full, and the current new funds that go into the fund are going to just roll over into the general development fund. I'm not sure if that's going to change or not once we spend our audit budget. UsePlume is running his developer campaign. Last I checked, it was only almost 1,400 euros out of the 55,000 that we need. And you know, that's really important. We need people that are full-time and are able to be supported full-time, spending time on the project. If you don't have that and it's pure volunteer basis, it can be challenging. And I really do appreciate the people that are working on a volunteer basis really stepping up and taking responsibility and making sure that we get good code. So I just encourage you today to send some money to the general fund, send some money to UsePlume, and make sure that we can keep building cool stuff. Finally, thanks to JP. He kind of did a favor and cleared out some of his schedule over the holiday and made this possible for us. So he likes Grin, and it's great to have people like him in the community. Okay, that's it on the crypto library.
Thank you, John. All right.